Good afternoon, everybody. Just to do quick introductions here as we get started so you can understand our perspectives as we're talking through the presentation here today. I'm John Wetter. I'm the Technical Services Manager for Hopkins Public Schools. Hopkins Public Schools is a school district here just in the west side of the Twin Cities metro area, a school district of about 7,000 students. And I'm the Technical Services Manager, which really means my job is taking the goals of the school district and transforming that into our IT deployments through infrastructure as well as devices. So,
I'm Brad Schmidt from Hopkins Public Schools. I've been in Hopkins for a few years. Previous to that, I was in St. Paul Schools, in case you might remember me from that tour. I'm the Technical Services Operations Manager, so I take the goals that John has kind of synthesized into some plans and put it into operations. I run a team that stays very busy all summer long, and they're wonderful to work with.
I'm Debbie Beck with the Alhambra Elementary School District. We're a K-8 school district in Phoenix, Arizona. We're inner city. We have about 40 languages that we support. We have over 13,000 students, 1,900 staff. My job is mainly the computer side. I also have my ACMT, so I do the repairs for the district, and then work web help desk tickets. And then I manage the computer side of our cloud-hosted instance.
So just walking through our presentation real quick here today, really going to just start out, first of all, planning, which in no way can be overstated, of course. The Apple programs, staying current on that and some of the challenges certainly that brings to the IT folks. Some of the unique workflows that we've all synthesized into our operations. And of course, what would any conversation be without some sort of information about dongles, cases, and keyboards?
So in April, we learned that we would be doing a major refresh. All but a very small percentage of our devices were going to be boxed up and rebought by a third party. I think we kept about 3%. We needed a plan. We were going to switch from Casper imaging workflows, which were almost set up to deploy, into device enrollment program, which we had just been looking at. So what we were looking at would now be what we were implementing. We needed to box up physically all devices as well as remove almost everything from our Jamf instance. To do that, we built a second managed by account so that we could scope based on the managed account and then exclude based on that and then remove them from Jamf as we sold them back to the company. It also assisted us with our summer school as we had to keep that going, the old devices, during the deployment. We needed to develop physical workspace planning at multiple sites. We have 16 sites. We needed to communicate with them which room we could use at their site for the purposes of boxing up and then reloading carts. We needed to develop specific detailed timelines for what it takes to do a task. So we used Google Docs for that. It documented everything that we needed, including contacts, availability, everything, all the details, anything we would need at a site.
All right, so some of the planning process that we look in Hopkins with our one-to-one, but I think something that translates to all environments, whether you're just starting out a brand new deployment or this is years I call N+1. So however many years you might be into your deployment. So start with deployment date and build backwards. So that's something that likely happens as a community discussion. Is that going to be part of an open house in the school? Is that going to be the first day of school? That's different really in just about every environment I've seen these projects go. So find that date and then start building forward. Find your events that you really have to build back for. What are those milestones? So what are you've chosen the apps that you're planning to deploy on day one. You're choosing the just general setup you want to have in those devices. What are those milestones building back from that date you're hoping to deploy those devices throughout your environment? So if this is your first rollout, learn from others. You know, professional learning cadres are not just for teachers. You need to think about that as an IT aspect as well, making sure, learn from others. There's such a wealth of information available in this fantastic Mac community that really you shouldn't feel like you're ever on an island and needing to learn something or do something for the first time. If this is your N+1, look back at your notes, because you should be keeping notes. So let's make sure we always can review what we've done in the years past. Review those after action reports. Sometimes that can be the most critical information you look at. And when you're reviewing that, don't just look at it from an IT perspective. That has to be an entire reality of the deployment. So perception is reality. Does your idea of a success match up with what your idea of the community was? So do your teachers feel like it was a success? Do parents feel like it was a success? Do students and do your faculty feel like this was a success? Make sure that you have all of those perspectives when you're really looking at how did the event go in general.
So leading up to events like that, Milestones, there's a lot of work that has to be done previous to those kicking off without a hitch. And the summer is a great time to do a lot of those projects. The students aren't around, at least some of them. But we do support summer school. Our team has a lot of things that they're supporting. We're looking at going through and cleaning projectors. We're looking at our one-to-one devices that are turned in the summer. We're going through those, charging them up, cleaning them up, putting new cases on. And during the school year, we have techs out in our buildings, and they don't get a lot of opportunities to work together. So I really try to focus on having the team work together in the summer to build and strengthen those relationships so that during the school year, hey, people are a Slack message away, but they have that connection that they built over the summer. One of the ways that I think that they can build that, that connection is allowing them to innovate. You can plan all you want for different rollouts or white gloving situations, but leave some leeway so that your team can come up with some innovations of their own, because they're going to come up with some ideas that you just weren't thinking of. And I think that, like I said, really kind of brings that team together when they can own it. So one of the challenges with summer is it is getting compressed. We have less time. And we need to make sure that we do meet those milestones, even though we are working backwards. We still have to get things done. And looking back at how long things used to take is a great way to look at things. Just recently, we were white gloving our student iPads for 6th grade, and I really remember exactly how long it took. I had kind of an idea and had some notes, but it was a busy time and just didn't document it as well as I probably could have. But I looked back at the JSS and I saw how many devices had actually enrolled in that week and how many were going per day, and I was able to kind of get a basis off of that.
We were just going to pick one device. This represents a whole lot of things that you need to think about for the summer. I chose availability because, for one, a lot of certified staff aren't available. So if you're doing big projects, are your key people available? If they're not, then who falls next in line so that things aren't held up? Also, we communicate with all of the different departments, especially maintenance and warehouse. We had a truck show up this year without a lift gate, and the site we were working at didn't have a loading dock. So had we not communicated to them the availability that we may need them, we wouldn't have been able to get the devices off of the truck.
Yeah, I look at things like that will work right away on day one, but as you get into like 200, 300 devices, did you just run out of DHCP leases? Things that you're putting on your network that you wouldn't ordinarily do. Are you able to kind of foresee those kind of things?
Mm-hmm. And also, even along those lines of maintenance and reserving rooms, in the summer, of course, is when our maintenance staff is busy as well, cleaning rooms and resealing the terrazzo floors and shampooing all the carpets, doing all of that work. So understanding what rooms do you really have access to and when do you have access to those rooms, and making sure that you're understanding that, because that maintenance worker can be your best ally in making sure that goes really smoothly for you. And of course, just making sure that you've got some place to put all that cardboard at the end of the project. You just start thinking of those basic things that you can really trip you up if you don't have some way to deal with that. Certainly we are, continuing to get used to Apple's cadence of releases with their software and the different programs available to us in K-12, as well as to our folks over on the commercial side of the world. It's so important, and this is where I, in a sense, start to get onto my soapbox a little bit, and really making sure that you're finding some time. I understand that that's always really difficult, but finding some time to participate in both Apple's beta programs as well as Jamf's beta programs. Have that view of what's coming down the road. Make sure that you understand how that's going to impact your environment, how is that going to impact your workflows that you've laid out in your project. Making sure that you just really see what that's going to happen. And every year, you see that screen grab from WWDC with all of the new features coming. And all right, it's Mac OS and it's iOS. I want that screenshot of all of that word cloud, in a sense, of what's coming that we need to be thinking about. So really making sure you're using those new features as they come available, because we've certainly seen many times it's the new feature transitions to your standard workflow, transitions to the only way to do it. So making sure that you're keeping up on that really makes sure that your workflow is going to stay intact for you. Lastly, I would just say make sure you're engaged with your Apple SE team. In K-12, we have Apple SEs assigned to us. If you don't know your Apple SE, make sure you do. Make sure you find that person. Make sure that they're making themselves available to help you with your project. Apple is a really good partner in making sure that we're all being successful, as is Jamf, helping to know what's coming, where are we going, looking at your workflow and saying, you might want to reconsider that step because that's going to catch you up on something that you haven't obviously discovered yet.
So speaking of features that are starting to become the trend or the way to go, there's this concept of shared mode iPad and then shared mode, or shared iPad with maybe a lowercase s, or as some people like to say, communal iPads, or how we used to do it. This title of the session is We Work Hard All Summer, but really we work hard all year to make sure that we've got the background set up in a way that we can be really flexible either during the summertime if we get a new initiative like shared iPad, shared mode iPad. We're able to swap in those devices and swap out very easily in the way that we're scoping apps and configuration profiles. Being able to share those smart groups and app assignments to a user that's assigned to a classroom has been just instrumental to being able to just flip things in and out as we've found more adoption of this shared mode, and we've been able to put resources towards that. Go to the next one. One of the things that we've started doing in Hopkins with our student devices is we're one-to-one, grades 7 through 9, and that is our junior high grades. In 6th grades, the students get the iPads in the fall, so we've been doing October. And we've done the There Is No Step 3 kind of setup with our students in the classroom. It takes about an hour, and we do all the unboxing, and it's really cool. But last year and this year, we decided to go through this white glove process, which is really taken our IT time from on the stage to off the stage. And it's something I would certainly be willing to talk in further detail later. One of the other things that we work really hard all year on is data integrity. If there's problems with your data, it's going to get you later. And the last thing I want to do when I'm deploying student devices in a one-to-one fashion is miss one kid, one student, because I can't even imagine how that would feel, being that student, being so excited to get your iPad, but because somebody screwed up a flag in your SIS, they don't get it that day. And just don't want to see that happen. So any time and effort you can put into that data integrity is a very good idea. So in Hopkins, we've had some conversations about security and PIN codes, and what we've found is that the students don't always remember their 6-digit PIN code, and so the teachers help them out by writing it down on a popsicle stick. So here's a little story of the popsicle stick and how that number gets down to the popsicle stick in a nice little cup. It starts with our SIS. Students are enrolled, and the information is entered, hopefully correctly, and then it travels on over to our identity management solution. It then the accounts are created, our Google for Education accounts are created, our Active Directory accounts are created, and other things that are authenticated off of that are provisioned or there's access granted. Then data from the IDM is sent back to campus. That data is then sent back out to ASM. We use the SFTP upload to kind of have a little more fine-grained control of what we're sending to them. And if we want to do anything over the top, like maybe create a 6th grade class and not just have individual sections. And then we have a staff member go through, reset those student pins, and then punch them in on the glass. And then eventually that teacher writes it down on the popsicle stick.
So switching from Casper Imaging to DEP, we already had our configurations pretty much locked down for what we thought was going to be a refresh. So what was here that we could repurpose or move to self-service? That's what it looked like to me. I was a lot of questions. So we depend heavily on our Apple SEs, and we also depend heavily on Jamf, my STAM. And I also look a lot to Jamf Nation to find what y'all are doing that's working well, and how can I adapt that to my environment. Oops, I wasn't, yeah, good, okay. So for DEP enrollment, on the computer side, we use one MDM instance, and then we use one pre-stage. We scope everything by naming. For the iOS side, it's first important to know that all of our devices are held in carts, and we do not do zero touch, and we are not one-to-one yet. So the tech department enrolls them. For the iOS, we put on the Wi-Fi profile. It checks in, gets its MDM instance, and then it checks in, gets its configuration profile. For staff and teachers, they authenticate using Active Directory. And then for students, we do it differently in that we need them named first. So we use Apple Configurator to name them and then go through the enrollment process. So this is our teams. We had one team for 1 week that enrolled over 6,000 devices at a site. And the way that we're successful in that is prior planning, prior details. We look back to our 2014 deployment to what we could learn from there. The other team is my Alhambra team of 14. That includes our tech director. It includes 4 certified teachers that we call tech facilitators. They work directly with the teachers. In our tech room, we have 7 staff, including our network staff, a server person. We also have a Windows support, projector, and smart boards. For level 1 techs, we have 3 that support the entire, and then myself, and I do the repairs and then manage the Apple's or the OS side of Jamf's, our cloud-hosted instance. So what was in our past that we needed to apply for our imminent future that was coming in just a very few months? We needed to box everything up. So these are just some picture representations of what we went through this summer. These 2 pictures represent communicating with the site, what was a room that wasn't going to get carpeted or painted or their floor done that we could put carts in so that small teams could go out, box everything up, inventory them, leave the carts there, so after enrollment happened, we could go back to that same room and reload those carts. These pictures are actually from our 2014 deployment. The top is the week prior to enrollment where we get all our devices in. We stage them by how they're going to work. We leave room at the side to, after they're unboxed, to have them available for enrollment. We also have a break area there. This is a facility that obviously has a bathroom. The bottom picture represents what it looks like during enrollment week. Along the walls, you can see the enrollment stations, obviously where the network ports and the electricity is. In the center, we have a table that is quality control, that looks to make sure the smart groups are being built correctly. If there's a DOE device, it's dealt with there. If there's a device that's just getting frustrated enrollment, it needs reset to its base OS, it goes there. So it keeps our enrollment stations chugging along. This is just a shout out to our maintenance and warehouse. They're wonderful. You need to communicate with them. They have their own summer tasks to do. The picture with the truck backing up is actually the truck that showed up without the lift gate, so they're getting ready to offload it. It only slowed us down by about 30 minutes because they were available. And then our maintenance staff, we try to leave the rooms that we're working in as they were when we arrived, because again, they've got a school to prepare. So we plan all of that into our plan. This is just an example of some small micro stations that we have to do the workflows through and be prepared for. On the with one of them, they're putting all the cart number and the slot numbers on all 5,200 students. As we're not one-to-one, they go in the carts. We have to know where they are. They have to be in sequential order. The other one is we had to deal with 5,200 power adapters, getting all those duck heads and extenders dealt with. We downsized to a certain size per box so that when the devices are delivered to the school, we know how many boxes need to go to that school so that those carts can get loaded. These 4 pictures, the computers in the upper left-hand corner, that's our student environment. We downsized 5 packs to 2 boxes that contained 1 cart. Again, we had asset tags in order, and the way we name, which I'll talk about later, required that we keep those in orders with also their slot numbers. This took them about 3 days to downsize, and we figured we touched over 8,000 boxes. I know you touched on boxes. We keep those boxes for future projects, so we had pallets and pallets of boxes. The upper right-hand corner is anything you use throughout the year, anything that you find necessary to do your job. We have a list of those things, and they go to the sites with us. Box cutters, Band-Aids, scanners, sticky notes, markers, blank paper, tape guns, all those things go on a table so it's available. You don't have to borrow from your school, and you don't have to go back to your site to get those. There, Dan, in the lower left, is just a reminder that your workers need breaks. We don't plan our breaks in mass. We allow the workers at their individual stations to decide that, when that should be within the scope. But as if you have a monitor or a leader, they need to be making sure that people are taking their breaks. And the last one with the chairs is just an example of how an enrollment station increased their enrollments per hour. Again, we start with Ethernet, and Wi-Fi profile comes later in the computer side. So they found that they could get them enrolling, get them on the Wi-Fi. They found a stack of chairs, laid them out there, and that enrollment did increase. So which comes first, name and enrollment or enroll and then name? We enroll and then name. So quickly, we get the welcome screen, we get the keyboard. We're hardwired at this point. The Wi-Fi configuration is put on later. Then we use a generic username and password for the enrollment process, and then this account is removed via script at enrollment complete. So for our naming policy, it's a packaged post-install script. It also updates the inventory. It reads a CSV naming file that's shared on a SharePoint. It's easy for us to access and update. If asset tag gets removed, it's easy to change. This script looks for and finds a serial number. If it doesn't find a matching serial number, it names the computer change me, drops it into a smart group, an email is triggered so that we know we have a problem with the computer. So the fields that this fills in is under inventory. For the student environment, that's where we put the slot number is under position, and then we also fill in the room field with the cart number. That helps us with scoping. And then we obviously fill in the computer name and the asset tag, and then we also fill in the site.
So I talked earlier about Apple programs. Certainly part of thinking about the Apple Cadence is just understanding how that ordering and updating of Apple hardware happens. We're seeing some more cadence to that, at least in the K-12 space. But thinking about, in June, you're going to see WWDC probably, and then, in the fall, you're going to see some sort of an iOS release. What kind of hardware comes with that is always, should I say fun? Is that the right word? I'm not sure if that is.
Depends on the year.
Right. But that's what we look at is some of that Cadence pieces, and I know I think all of us have a couple pieces just to think about that.
Yeah, definitely trying to get your POs ready to go before an announcement's made, so that if there is a big change, and you were really requiring like an iPad mini, let's say, that you can still get those really quickly.
We're a lot reactive, and we have grant writers, so like even now when I go back, I know I have 9 more carts that have come in that I will then need to enroll. So there is some, you can control what you can control, but there are some that come at you sideways.
All right. So with the last couple of years, we moved from Apple Configurator 1 over to device-based VPP app assignments, and on those shared mode with a capital S and shared devices. And one of the problems I've run into, and maybe you have as well, is knowing when those apps are done installing. Configurator 1 did a kind of nice job of letting you know when it was done. Might have been all it did, but go check out my GitHub. I've got an interactive Python script there to help you with that task and shut those devices down when they actually meet that installed requirement.
So special scoping is something that we really have to think about in K-12 as well. I think just about every project I've been involved with always starts on the everybody is going to have blank on their iPads. And that works great until about 5 minutes into the actual deployment, where you're going to start to find all those exceptions show up, whether that be because a teacher has a special app that they want to use in their classroom right away, or whether that be students' individual education plans that in some sense dictate to you as an IT organization what that iPad needs to look like, what that functionality needs to be out the door on day one to really help that student be successful and allow that technology to really help them in the classroom to explore and to really be able to work as just like any other student in their classroom. So really, how can you do that? I look at that from an IT standpoint and say there again, we have something to learn from our instructional staff and think about more of a universal design principle. How can you design as universally as possible? Think about that from building your layers of how that iPad deployment is going to look like and really make sure that you're going to make that fit for every student that you have in your classroom. Some of that from the Jamf side of the world really comes down to a much more layered approach. Have your profiles do essentially as little as possible in each profile and build those up so that they'll combine together and have your final product in the way that you want those devices, whether that be a macOS or an iOS device. What does that actually look like at the end of it? Layering that out allows you to then make minor exceptions or to make single user or small group exceptions to any single one of those pieces of that configuration. That really will save you a ton of time down the road versus now all of a sudden needing to uncheck a box which might wipe a configuration profile from all of your devices and then needing to immediately layer a different profile down to everyone but that small group of students. So that's really something to really help you look forward and make that plan work in your environment.
So dongles, cases, and keyboards. All the things that ship at the same time as your Apple devices and arrive on the same day, right? No. They never come at the same time. I just wanted to share a short story about asset tagging and cases. If you have your vendor tagging your devices, check them right away when they come in. Do they line up with that case, and did they actually apply it where you wanted them to? We ended up having to truck back a bunch of devices.
I'll say not that we've ever experienced this issue at all.
This is a true story. But some people remain nameless. and actually trucked the devices back to the vendor, and they trucked them back with the right placement and new asset tags. We did lose a couple of days there, but we had enough buffer that it didn't compromise our timelines. The other thing to check for is, do they scan appropriately? If you are expecting to pull them in with a barcode scanner, do they actually scan? Do they come in with extra dashes? Things like that that can be very frustrating to relabel a bunch of devices.
I'm going to jump back to a little bit. I know this is dongles, cases, and keyboards, but with all the things that you're getting, don't forget about recycling what you can. If you have the opportunity to outsource that or however it works, when you're generating so much, there's so much wrapping, so much cardboard, so much paper, utilize recycling if you can.
And reuse.
And
of
reuse.
pieces.
And reuse what you can.
You know, some of those boxes can go into so many other uses as you
Yeah.
reuse them, whether that be even in classroom storage. You know, our teachers are always wanting more storage to figure out something in their classroom and give them the opportunity to do some stacking of pieces. But really just making sure, you know, that everything, as Brad mentioned, has arrived. You know, and those decisions about what that functionality is going to look like, so you can really decide which of these things, first of all, do you actually need to even order in the first place. So some resources, really just for some general information. Your go-to information, first of all, Jamf Nation, an outstanding resource for folks to be able to get that information. The Apple and Jamf teams, I know we all work very closely with Jamf and our STAMs to find out what we need to be doing, what we need to be thinking about next. Making sure, of course, for those milestone dates that we know what decision we need to make so that we can involve all the proper parties to make that decision happen. So having everybody involved there. Certainly out to the community, we've got the link up here for Brad's GitHub repository that has a lot of great information out there. So the tools that we use for our deployments to make that happen every day, you know, adding that automation in and really helping to further, you know, the conversation of the Jamf and making sure that we're using everything that's capable, both from Jamf, Apple, and all the third parties that we work with. So really thinking about that, and, you know, of course, the community, the Mac admins, communitymacadmin.org, MacBrained, all of those opportunities for you to reach out and get those resources. That there's a great community here if we're all finding that information. So with that, thank you very much. And I believe we do have some time for questions.
Yep. We've got 2 microphones set up on either side of the stage. So if you want to pop up and ask our experts a question, they're happy to answer a few as time allows. And then afterwards, if you've got something specific, they've generously offered to meet you outside this room to talk through anything specific for a little bit.
There's a race.
Go ahead. My question, Mike Schmid from Langara College in Vancouver, BC. My question is in a lab environment. We have several labs in our environment that are needing updating with a certain amount of regularity. How do you guys deploy the software titles to a large lab, say, 50, 60 boxes all at the same time?
Well, I can speak for Hopkins. We, generally speaking, use policies. Larger suites, we might, like the Adobe suite, we may do that either through caching that policy and then doing an installation, or using Casper Remote as we need to.
Okay. So with policies, it's per title, the policy. So like, say I've got 10 softwares, and when the computer checks in, it picks up those 10? Or do you go, this is lab XYZ, and you get all these softwares?
Yeah, we really have a blended approach.
Okay.
So our techs are all admins in Jamf Pro, and they're able to create their own policies. If they want to add additional software, either in one payload or multiple, they can do that. From the central IT, we manage all of our patching. So if a lab of computers has Chrome, we make sure that they stay up to date. Really looking forward to the new features.
I
in
saw
Jamf
that
Pro
too.
10 for helping us out there and making that a little bit more seamless.
Okay. Thank you.
Ours is similar with the policies. Our labs are all carts, so I have specific cart numbers that are labeled lab. There's 1 or 2 per school, so I can either scope specifically to that site under the concept that it's still a lab cart.
Okay, so in that instance with those carts or your lab as it is, do you reimage those quarterly, yearly, or do you just replace them?
We refresh our refresh our student computers every summer, but our turnover rate in students is about 30% per year. So it's important for us to touch all of the student computers every summer.
Okay, so then when it comes to the reimaging process, do you actually reimage them, or does DEP do that for you? Like, do you?
This will be our first year with DEP,
Okay.
and so it's unknown, except for I believe we'll reset them to a base OS and then re-enroll them.
Which is what DEP would do.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yep.
And up until now, though, you've been reimaging.
Up until now, we were re-imaging them every summer.
I'd be curious to hear how it works for you, because I'm going to be exactly in that same boat. I'm probably 6 months behind where you are right now.
Okay,
so
yeah, we can talk.
That'd be great. Thank you.
We're also imaging our shared devices, our lab Macs or our cart Macs, and we use USB thumb drives for the most part, since we have a lot of MacBook Airs.
Hi, Mark Behale from Rockers High School in Kansas City. Just wondering who you chose for your cart manufacturers and whether or not you're pleased, displeased, drawbacks, so forth.
Do you want to go first, or?
Well, ours is easy. I hope to never buy another cart ever again. We have Bretford carts currently, because really when it comes down to carts where you do need to have them, my experience is when I've tried to save money there, it's cheap instead of good value. So we've really stayed with kind of the big names and carts around that. But we're in Hopkins, we're really reducing the number of carts we have. It's either 1-to-1 or it's sets of 2-to-1. So a half set of devices that stay within the cart route in the classroom, period. So we're really reducing, if not eliminating, the actual number of carts we have in a sense.
We also use Bretford, although I know they bought some different type, and I don't know the name of that, but I could get that for you. I know they're happier with the new ones they have and the way that they cable. We also have a problem if they can get to the back and they can get to the power cord, those are disappearing on us. So we.
Thank you.
So my question is, you were just talking about imaging your MacBook Airs or something you said. Is that monolithic imaging that you're using still, or are you just resetting base OS and then basically reinstalling from there?
Sure, we're using Casper Imaging, and we use AutoDMG. That's a free tool to create kind of an unbooted operating system disk image. Things obviously are changing with High Sierra and APFS.
That was my follow-up question.
So I'm sure that's going to break down next year, because you have to upgrade your Mac with the installer. So that's going to be a lot of extra work for us this summer as we really try to unify our platform and deploy High Sierra to everything.
And we understand that Jamf is working on some workflows to help streamline that, because for us, that's one of the goals we're working through the year now and also in the summer, is we have a major network project that we're working in next summer. And so we're trying to make our operating system environment as flat as absolutely possible, so we don't have to test against so many OSs. So that's, a project essentially that's now, as we're trying to really work through what those workflows are going to look like for devices that we need to have there by the time we go to summer. And then, of course, for all of our other devices that we'll be refreshing in the summer as well.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but is it true that once you install 10.13 with the factory or with this Apple installer, then after that it has all the firmware updates it needs and everything, and then you could feasibly image it with 10.13 from then on?
That's what they're stating. It sounds like you need a build per hardware, though, so watch out.
Yeah, our understanding is that is the case with all current released hardware.
Great.
That's
Keep in touch with your SE team. right?
Hey guys, this question, you guys didn't actually talk about this, but I'm curious if you know. Through self-service, is there a way to keep those applications updated automatically without having to sort of update the package and upload it, or is there no way to do that?
So I assume you're talking Mac OS with packages?
Well, any application that you can toss in self-service.
You're talking about the Mac OS self-service though, or iOS?
Mac OS, sorry, yeah,
Sure.
Mac OS.
Yeah, I mean, as of today, JNUC Pro is making strides to a solid patch solution. You know, they've reporting, and now with JNUC 10, we're seeing the ability to make patch policies. It looks like you do still need to upload that package, which I do believe is part of their next phase. Certainly, there are some other tools out there like Auto Packager that you might be interested in if you're looking to implement something like that before Jamf does. But you may be better off holding until that time. That would be a supported by Jamf solution.
Awesome, thank you.
Our next session in this room is on patch too, so just
Yeah.
stay in here and we'll probably
We're
help.
just foreshadowing, right?
Good afternoon. I guess my question is, we just went through a big device refresh in our district, and we had our vendor asset tag all of our devices for us, so it was nice that we didn't have to label or do any of that. One thing we've already started running into with the school district, and the school year starting, is devices get broken and they have to go out for repair. We use a third-party vendor if it's not under Apple Care for the device. But if that device is a total loss, obviously that asset tag and that serial number are no longer part of our devices. So what are you guys doing if you have that situation as far as reissuing another fixed asset?
I can speak to that one. We ordered 1 or 2 extra devices for every school site. So accidents happen. That allows them to have that one replaced automatically. After that, it becomes a charge to the school. The asset tag does not become a part of our problem because we base it on the naming. So ours are grouped by cart or whatever, so we can just replace one in really easily.
Anyone else? We've got a couple more minutes.
Hey guys, I really like the idea of what you're doing with that CSV file to set the automated computer naming up. Is that something that you have to inject into each computer somehow, or is it all driven from the JSS end?
It's all driven from JSS. It's a post-install script that just runs.
Yeah, and you've just compiled a list of serial numbers
Yeah, and I
correlate
actually,
that with a name?
yeah, one of the Jamf engineers actually wrote that for us.
Oh, very nice.
And I've been given permission to share that out if you'd like it.
Very nice. And that's how you form the smart groups automatically then, after you've
Yep,
got the name
yep.
set?
It names that device, it puts in those fields for us, we can scope based on any of those fields.
Yeah.
It also, I know there's a lot of discussion in Jamf Nation as like versus is. We do use quite a bit of like.
Okay. I'd love to check it out. It's good.
So my question more has to do with strategy than it does actually with JSS. So a lot of our users are actually faculty. I work at a university. And we've deployed Apple computers for a while now, maybe 5 or 6 years, but we've only deployed Jamf maybe about a year ago. And one of the big problems we're having is getting them to sort of relinquish some of their power and let us go ahead and enroll them because they're real skeptical of the software. And I wonder if you guys have ever run into that and what kind of strategies you use to get around that issue.
Well, at Hopkins, we've been on Jamf Pro for essentially ever. We've been a Jamf district since version 2, so a little bit of time there. But it was purchased right when I came into Hopkins, and the way that I did that is we made that your inventory dependent on your device being replaced. If your device was not in our inventory, it never got replaced. That's an interesting motivation for folks.
We tried to twist it into a positive aspect. What was in Jamf that we could make such a positive experience for them that they would want that they would see that as a positive. Now they could use self-service to get things. They had less problems with their computer. We just tried to switch anything over to a positive.
Yeah, self-service has been a good thing for me to push, but
And
some
the
of them are
links.
still.
And the links for people. People get frustrated with bookmarks in our environment, especially if they change. And if we're keeping those up to date for them. A big one I put in self-service was the cafeteria menu.
Yeah, there are really a lot more opportunities now to lead with a carrot versus a stick, certainly.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, well, I think we're all set on time. Thank you so much for presenting.
Thank you.